Are you looking for an item you could make pretty easily that you should be able to sell fairly easily as well? Well, I've got a pretty good idea for you today, and that idea is house numbers. This one is more of a beach theme. I'm going to show you how to make this. In a coming video, I'm going to show you a little bit more of a traditional themed one, but we're going to cover the surfboard style first. The great thing about these is people will want them for their house, but you can also market them to people such as realtors who are looking for a gift to give someone for like a housewarming gift when they sell them a house. So stay tuned, we're going to get into how we make this. All right, so I'm going to make this surfboard shaped address sign for a house, and I found this drawing of a surfboard online. Dimensions were actually real size. I scaled them down to the size I wanted, and I'm just trying to come up with a plan. So what I'm thinking is I want to make a edge on each side that's walnut. I think I'm going to go with about 1 inch. So I'm just going to get a little color scheme going on here. So this is my walnut. Then I'm going to come in for like 1.5 inches I have a lime green colored paint, and we're going to get it green. Then we're going to come back with a strip of walnut, another 1 inch in. And then the center of the surfboard, I'm going to make, it's going to be ash. I have a piece of ash, so we're going to use ash. I'm not going to color that in. And then I'm going to come back with walnut again. Back to green. And then walnut out here on the edge, just like the other side. So I think that's what the plan is. Where the green is, I'm actually just going to use poplar, and I'll mask it off after it's all glued up and paint it with some spray paint. So that's kind of the plan we're going to go with. So I'm going to get to planing these boards right here. I have some pieces ready here. I just got to plane them. Then I'm going to cut them to widths and do a glue up, and then we'll be ready to cut the actual shape. After planing the boards, I cut all of them to the width that I discussed earlier when I was showing you the design, and we're just going to apply some glue here, and I just want a decent amount of glue on each edge, and then I just spread it out, make sure there's good coverage. I definitely want it to ooze out a little bit, so when you're gluing up, you really want to make sure that you have at least a little bit that oozes out, so that you're sure to get a good surface, especially in something like this where you don't want to have any gaps. So once we do that, then we'll clamp this thing, and I put as many clamps as I can fit, just because there's one spot where it just wasn't quite pulled together, and I wanted to draw it in as the best I could. So then we will move on to cleaning up the pieces by first scraping them and then running them through the surface planer. Once we get all that glue off, we're going to go to the surface planer, and I'm going to plane both sides, and I want to keep this as thick as possible just because the bolts that hold those numbers on really require an inch of thickness, and I'm really close to that right now. So I'm just going to hit both sides until they clean up, and then I'm going to stop. After it was planed, I needed some mounting holes for this to mount onto the side of the house, and I went to my CNC router for this. I have a keyhole bit, and what I decided to do was I wanted to create 2 mounting points so that the sign would be a lot more stable. It wouldn't tip. If you have 2 mounting points, there's really no way for it to get off center and hang crooked. So I put one towards one end, one towards the other end. They were 10 inches apart, and they are centered on the surfboard. So it should hold things really well once I get it in place. Next, I turn the board sideways and cut out the surfboard shape with a 1/4 inch bit on my CNC router. After I was done routing it, I took it over to my workbench. I got my sander out. I sanded the whole way up through to get a real nice smooth surface and ready for paint and finish. Next, I got some masking tape out and I just masked off anything that wasn't poplar. It was pretty easy to do on the top. It was a little bit more difficult to do when the wood joint transitioned down the side because the angle changes a little bit, and it was kind of tricky outside on the edge where the walnut is, and it's rounded. It wasn't a straight line, and just added a little bit of difficulty. I just took a little bit of extra time to be careful and make sure that I got that taped off real nice. And it ended up turning out really good, but I was a little worried at a few points. In addition, I was using just a normal masking tape, and usually when I paint things, I like to use more of a painting tape that's specially designed for that, just because you get a little bit less paint bleed underneath. But I didn't have any on hand, and I was kind of in a time crunch to get this done. It didn't really bleed very much, and the parts that did bleed, I just took a little razor blade and just kind of scraped a little bit of it, and you really couldn't tell at all. After that, I started hitting that poplar with the spray paint that I bought, and I tried to do real light coats. I was careful not to flood it, especially because it could bleed up underneath that tape. I wanted real light coats. And so it took, I would say, 3 or 4 coats to get to the coverage I wanted. And once that was done, I was able to then peel off all the tape. Once I got all the tape off, I got a spar urethane out. I brushed on 3 coats on each side of this. And this is going to be in Florida, hanging up on a house. So I wanted to make sure I had good coverage, protected from the elements, because I'd really want that green paint to maintain its look and give it as long as possible before it would ever need repainted. Once you get these numbers on, it would be extremely hard to repaint. So I thought it was important to get adequate coverage now. After the finish was dry, I cut out the templates that were provided with the numbers, and I taped them all together and centered them on the surfboard. This took a little bit of time. I had to be really careful because I didn't want the numbers to end up crooked, because once you drill these holes, you're kind of stuck. And I definitely didn't want to recreate the entire thing all over again. Next, I just used a center punch and center punched the holes that were on the templates provided by the manufacturer. And then I got the drill bit out the size they recommended and drilled those out. And then we're ready to mount those numbers onto the sign. Now, these numbers have a raised look to them. And what it is it screws into the back of the number, and then it's like a post, and you drive the bottom half of that post into the board, and it has ridges on it that hold it in place. These are actually in the instructions. They talk about mounting them in drywall. It worked just as well in the wood. I just had to be careful about that hole size to make sure it was a snug fit. One thing I did was make sure that I didn't mar up the finish on those numbers, so I used a towel, and whenever I pounded the numbers in, I covered them up, and the towel took any of the brunt of the hammer. Therefore, the surface stayed how it was supposed to. I also was very careful to make sure I was driving directly over those posts. I didn't want to hit it in the middle and bend it. So there are a few little cautionary things you got to watch when you put these in, but I had no issues. They turned out great.
So there you have it. Fairly simple to make, really. You glue up some strips, you come up with a color scheme that you want, and then I just followed the directions that came with the numbers. I bought those numbers at Menards, but I'm sure you can get them at any kind of home improvement store, as well as probably on Amazon. They have the raised look to it, so it has kind of a sleek, modern look, which I really like. And you could go with different colors. I have some that we're going to use in the coming video that are just black, but I thought the silver would look really good with this surfboard style. So if you know anybody that has a coastal house, maybe you have a coastal house, this might be something they would like to buy, or just have, you could give as a gift to someone. And like I said at the beginning of the video, realtors are always looking for gifts for people. This would be a great gift that a realtor could give to their clients after they sell them a house. So thanks again for watching. Check these videos out on the next screen, and don't forget to stay tuned because we do have another style of house sign coming here in a few weeks. See you next time.